Hello, I'm Crystal Joy.
I'm David Raziel.
And this is I'm Psychic.
I guess.
I guess, because the internet said anybody could be a psychic.
We're here to see if that's true.
And by testing things and talking about them and maybe one day having guests and talking to them and then sharing with you anything that we find is valuable / what we find is bullshit.
Disclaimer, we don't know what we're doing. This whole thing is a journey. We're figuring it out as we go.
So if we make mistakes, get something wrong, say something problematic, please do let us know. We're coming at this from an explorative place where we're not trying to pretend like we're telling you what to do because we don't know.
This is literally just the recollections of our journey, and we're happy to have you on it.
Lastly, we approach everything on this podcast as though psychic ability is something that you can obtain or attain simply so that we don't skew our results in any way by making some kind of weird psychological barrier to it. We don't know if it's true or if it's real or how it works. So everything we talk about on this podcast is through I did this and this is what happened as though psychic ability is real way. Simultaneously, if we talk about like, oh, energy does this and energy does that, it's also coming from the same place. I don't know if it does, but
we think it does.
We think it does, and talking about it from the perspective that we do is what gives us the results that we get.
So welcome.
Yeah. So welcome. Hopefully, like I said, one day we'll start having guests of various expertises one day.
Until then, you're stuck with us.
Until then, it's just us beach. So this week, we're continuing our little checklist that I made about how to use discernment and use critical thinking for the stuff that you consume and towards yourself so that you don't fall into spiritual pitfalls. Right? And how that affects your beliefs. And we also talked about last episode why those beliefs are so important. Of filters how you react and blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
So this week, I figured we would finish that list up. And then I think we're going to go into the pitfalls that people have mentioned, that we've mentioned a few times, like last episode, that people can fall into when doing any kind of spiritual work. It's not just psychic work. It's the occult. It's magical. It's spiritual. It's esoteric, new age spiritualism, whatever.
Okay.
What do you think about that?
That sounds good. And then on another episode, we'll do the...
Oh, the unification of the selves.
Unification of the selves.
Yeah, I think I want to make that a whole episode.
Yeah.
So, David, for review, what was the checklist?
Nope.
Do you remember
not
anything?
Not even a little bit. I'm going to try.
Do your best.
Something about how much money they want.
That's next. That's not happened yet.
Yeah, no, we're getting there.
We're getting there.
Fear. Is it hurtful? Is it harmful? Is it bettering? And that's it. That's all I got.
Othering.
Othering.
That was close. Yeah.
That's close.
So you did. It was pretty close.
It was inging.
Inging. For those who didn't listen to last episode, the list is something that I made for myself while I was consuming stuff that made me stop and be like, whoa, do I like that or do I hate that? If I hate that, why do I hate that? Is it me or is this thing not helpful?
Right.
So this is that checklist. It starts off with, is this rooted in fear?
Mm-hmm.
Functioning out of fear in any capacity is never a good thing. You can challenge something. You can discuss why something is or is not helpful or whatever, but to approach something default from a fear-based place, never really helpful.
Making decisions from fear-based is usually not helpful.
Oh, that's also never helpful.
So it makes sense.
So is this harmful? That's very nuanced, and honestly, that deserves its own episode. But basically, what we ended up getting down to is, are you saying somebody minding their own business shouldn't exist? Right. Are you minding your own business and you're, wanting to hurt yourself or harm yourself? Does this thing say that you intrinsically just existing are bad? That's, you've done nothing and you're innately bad just for being you.
Just for existing.
And then there was, does it separate me from others? Is this othering? Which, again, we won't go into it. You can listen to the last episode. We talk all about it. And we move into, is this exclusive or special? So it is othering and then how you find your place in that othered spot.
Yeah.
You can say, oh, everybody's equal, but you just haven't gotten here yet. Or if you believe this, then you're special. Or if you think this, then,
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then that got into narcissism and ego traps. And so
we've also discussed, they all seem to tie together. Mm-hmm. They all link.
They build off of one another.
Yeah. So if you see one of the previous topics falling into another topic, or it almost seems like they're the same one, that's because they're very closely related.
Yeah, I completely agree. And so that's where we left off. And we'll say the last part of that last conversation was too many people want to be special or exclusive or holier or whatever. And we got into like killing the ego, and it's a great conversation. So we pick up this time with the last 3. They're a little bit more practical, still a little nuanced, but these next 3 are a bit more direct and to the point.
Yeah.
How badly do they want my money is the first one.
How badly do they want my money?
And this, mind you, this is after you've gone through the other steps.
Right.
So how badly do they want my money, I feel like is pretty important.
Can they be the previous steps without wanting your money?
What do you mean?
I feel like how much money they want is the end goal, right? Like, because they get something from you.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a place where some of these topics that we've chosen are not present within this toxic
So like
thing that you're trying to discern?
So it could be like, this isn't rooted in fear.
Right.
This isn't harming anybody.
Sans 1 or 2 of these.
Okay, so this isn't rooted in fear. It's not harming anybody. It is a little bit exclusive.
Right.
It is a little bit othering. And
Or does it have to encompass all of it?
I don't know. I feel like any of these are kind of red flags, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
If it's rooted in fear, like, fuck everything else. Like, that's it.
I know they all lead kind of into each other, but I feel like this is the first one that might be able to be nixed. Not nixed from the list, but nixed from like, they didn't include this part, so it's okay, you know?
Well, no. If they hit all the other check marks, but they're not asking for any money, that's a cult. You know? So I also have to acknowledge money is important. Money is an energetic exchange, right? Everybody deserves to be compensated for the energy that they're outputting into the world. And so there's this like idea that if you're passionate about something, you shouldn't be paid for it. That's bullshit. That's not what I'm saying. Everybody should be fairly compensated for it. But it's these like $5,000 retreats where you learn this magical thing that they refuse to put in their books or talk on their podcast about, and if you go, then you attain this enlightenment that you can only attain at this retreat that cost $5,000. And it's like, okay, relax.
I've not seen those, but I know they exist.
Well, that kind of gets into that. That's why Michelle Phan almost did kind of get canceled. Everybody thinks she's in a cult now because of it.
They still think she's in a cult?
I don't know. I'm not hip on the up with that. But when that happened, for those of you who don't know, Michelle Phan, the famous OG beauty vlogger from old YouTube, she made a comeback lately, doing blah, blah, blah. She's into her own spiritual journey and her own spiritual stuff, which is cool. We go you. She went to some retreat, which they had her wake up at 4 a.m. or something like that. And she started sharing like daily things. And the way it was phrased in her stories, I'm sure you can find articles about this online. I'm sure people screenshotted the stories. It made it seem like whatever this retreat was, which by the way was like many thousands of dollars. Her friend really wanted her to go. Her friend was like, it's Joe Dispenza becoming supernatural, for those of you who are up on the up with that. Anyway, she went to a retreat and they were having them wake up at 4, and then also for some reason not having them go to sleep until very late. The whole thing in this
sleep deprivation.
Yeah, she's like, I only got 4 hours of sleep last night, and like every day would be like less and less hours of sleep. Yeah, it was like really weird, and it was a really big red flag for a lot of people.
Yeah. By
the end of it, they're like, Michelle Phan's in a cult. Joe Dispenza's running a cult.
Right.
This isn't about cults, but point is, in my opinion, as much as I have read Becoming Supernatural, I didn't read his other books. I have heard his meditations, and I've done a few of them. So I didn't pay for them, by the way. I got it up as the library before it got shut down. I don't like giving my money to people that I'm not sold on, and his doctorate, quote unquote, is sus, to say the least. I think there's a podcast, Conspirituality, that talks about his thing, but he also did in fact get his bachelor's of science in neurobiology, I think. So he is kind of, I don't know. This isn't about that. My point is these retreats cost a lot of money. And a lot of what he does, actually, Holly Jordan. Hey, if you like fucking meditations, I'm gonna give this girl a shout out. Holly Jordan's meditations on YouTube.
They are very good.
HOLLIE Jordan. She's amazing. We found her because she has this lovely, beautiful voice, and we really wanted to do the Joe Dispenza meditations, but his voice is so shrill and it gives me such bad vibes. And she had his meditations in her own voice, and it was beautiful. He sent her a cease and desist letter, and you have to pay like $25 or $30 just to get one of these meditations.
Yeah.
So you see how this starts to get really sus really quick?
Yeah. I mean, it is his work.
It is his work, but simultaneously, it's just like, why is that meditation $25 for one meditation? You know?
Yeah, that's crazy.
It starts to get a little nickel and dimey.
Now, do you have to keep paying for every single one?
Like if you have it, then you have that meditation and you can use it ongoing. But It's not like buy this set of meditations or whatever, or subscribe to my Patreon and get my meditations. Like I would even accept that, but it's not like that.
Right. It seems like money grabbing.
Everything he does screams money grabbing, and he doesn't have a real doctorate. So you know, it starts to get like,
yeah, it starts to look weird.
That goes into what's the source with the doctorate, which is the next question, but I want to finish this conversation first. How much money and how badly do they want my money? Again, people who are skilled, who have spent a lot of time getting skill, and they have every right to be compensated for the work that they've done.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are listening and you like our stuff, we do have like psychic birth chart analyses. I'm going to have to raise the price on that, because something that I thought was going to take me 15, 20 minutes to put together ends up taking me half a day all day, because I'm extra and I really like to make it really good and worth it. And it's just not worth money on my end anymore.
Right.
So I'm going to actually have to increase the price on that soonish. So if you want a psychic analysis birth chart reading at $45, you gotta have to do it soon. So that's what I'm saying. Your energy and your time is worth getting compensated for. We live in a capitalist society, unfortunately. We do not have universal basic income in this country, unfortunately. However,
if it seems like it's draining you,
like that's the
and it's skeezy. It could also seem skeezy.
Like also, to me, it gets down to the why. Why are you doing this? Are you doing this because you want to educate and help people truly? Are you doing this to nickel and dime everybody as much as you possibly can?
Right.
You know, and it's like when it starts getting skeezy and suspicious and like the money is really the main point, you start being like, I don't know.
I think it's more so that they are overcharging for something that is obviously not worth. The product is way overpriced. Because I think if someone's doing it for money, they have talents. I sing. If I sang for money,
then get fucking money, bitch.
Then get money,
Get
right?
your bag.
Do your thing.
I want to really urge, get your fucking bag. And pay artists and creators for their work and their energy.
And this kind of seems like another part of that. However, if you're overcharging and it seems you're taking advantage of people who are just really desperate, and so you're charging them way more than you know you should be, that's when...
And that's the question. The question that we ask is, how bad do they want my money?
Right.
Right. And I guess the phrasing of it could be like, everybody wants money. Everybody wants money badly. But is it coming from a money-centric place?
Right.
Rather than I have these talents and I want to share them, or I want to help others, or I want to share this with the world and I want to be compensated and live a good life for it, you know?
Yeah, I have skills and I'm paying.
And I'm getting compensated for them versus this is obviously a cash grab.
Right.
And to ask yourself, is this obviously a cash grab? You can look at somebody's prices and be like, oh, well, that's ridiculous. I don't want to pay $500 for a mediumship reading. But that person might have been doing it for like 25, 30 years and be really goddamn good. You know, that's not what I'm saying. The price of the services that are being offered or asked for is one thing. It's this person who's obviously very good at marketing. Joe Dispenza is obviously very good at marketing, and it's riddled through everything that he does. Even though there is very valid and helpful and interesting information in what he's offering, I feel like it's almost overshadowed by all of the marketing lingo and the money and the click funnels, and it's just a little much.
It's too commercial.
It's too commercial-y rather than like, you know?
Yeah. It doesn't seem
There's
genuine
an energy
at all.
to it. It's hard to say because it doesn't seem genuine. Yeah, it doesn't seem genuine. And also, if you don't want Holly Jordan to provide beautifully soothing versions of your podcast, hire a woman to do it.
It's a little grating.
Now I'm complaining, but it starts coming from a place of like, oh, you just want money and you want to be the only one who does it because you want to be the best one. And you're a fake doctor. It's weird.
Damn. Came for his throat.
It's weird. Again, though, if you ever manage to pass over becoming supernatural and it comes into your possession, or
there are some good things that
there
you can
are
take
some
from it.
really good things that you can take from it, which is what this is about. This whole list is like taking the good shit, which there is a lot of good fucking shit in his content, and leaving the stuff that is energetically mucky.
Right.
And that's what the whole thing is about.
Take it with a grain of salt.
Take it with a grain of salt. The second one is, what's the source? Which again, it came up naturally while we were talking about the money conversation, right?
The person who is talking, what credentials do they have? What sources are they?
Yes. And if they don't have credentials like myself, are they admitting that they don't have credentials?
Are they claiming that they have something that they don't?
Mm-hmm. Or are they claiming to be this guru who did blah, blah, blah? Because unfortunately, the way TikTok and online media is formulated right now as I'm recording this, I'm on like do good on TikTok TikTok because I started trying to fucking do TikTok because of this. And I see so many things like, you need to be educating. You need to share your information. You need to be blah, blah, blah. You don't have to be educated to start sharing the knowledge that you have. And that is true. Everybody has something that you can learn from. But you do need to be
transparent
about it. But you do need to be transparent about it. And a lot of these people catch wind that you get a lot of clicks if you act like you know what you're talking about. People see how well you can do on TikTok if you just act like, I have the secret, blah, blah, blah. I know the answer, blah, blah, blah. I'm the expert and I'm a this and I'm a that. Are they? Like a lot of times, guys, the answer is no.
Like, but they're very good at saying that.
And it's tempting because it does well. So I did this, if you follow us on TikTok a little while ago when I was still doing handhelds. I'm overwhelmed. Hi, I haven't done them in a while. Yeah.
Aren't we all?
Aren't we all? I was doing the astrology thing, which is like, this could be helpful for people. Like I said that before, how I even started this fucking podcast in the first place was like a desperate, what's in my birth chart? Let's try that. And it was like, you're a psychic. And I was like, okay. And I figured that's helpful information.
And it was like, you help people for me. You help people through by telling them
about your pain.
And
you're also psychic.
Yeah, you're sort of psychic.
You are.
Yeah.
It's there. Anyway, so we're like, I guess that's what we're going to do. And that's where this podcast came from. But it's also helpful. The more I learn about astrology and psychic ability, the more I'm saying you can kind of start seeing your extra sensory abilities that you might be inclined to have. I'm like, oh, that's a helpful thing to share. I am not an astrologer. I have not been trained. I am self-taught. And TikTok does not fucking count. TikTok astrology is not real astrology. 90% of those people are talking out of their ass. Like, and I've learned that through self-teaching, but even so, I still feel very uncomfortable making astrology content like I know what I'm talking about.
However, Crystal's not the normal kind of person where she's just like fixates on something and then actually becomes super proficient at doing whatever it is that she's self-studying. Whereas a lot of people are like, that's enough self-studying for today. I did it for 2 minutes. I know everything. Crystal actually does make charts and read books about shit and then like cross references and does all this. She's like a fucking detective when it comes to this shit. Thanks. And I'm just like, yeah, I could never. But that's so cool that you can do that.
Thanks.
And so her, like, I'm not good at that is like, she's really good at that. And other people are just not even close to doing that.
You're so sweet.
I'm being dead ass.
You're so sweet. This simultaneously, though, even with that being the case, I am not trained. I would love to take a proper class from people who have been doing this for 20 or 30 years to see where the holes are in my information. So right. I feel to just go on TikTok and be like, hi, I'm an astrologer and this is how you find your fucking birth chart information and psychic ability. I feel like that's so fucking fake, especially with the whole point of this podcast and everything that we do being as transparent as possible about the fact that we don't know what we're doing. Right. So many people before we started this podcast were like, oh, you guys know so much. Crystal, you know so much about this and that. You should make a podcast. I'm like, I don't fucking know what I'm doing. I went to school for media communications. I hyperfixated in 2020 through now. And like now I've read some books. I'm not educated.
I mean, that's not true. See, but I feel like you don't want to downplay that either. You are educated.
No, I'm not. What's my sources? Crystal,
you have so many.
You know what I'm saying? When I say what's the source?
You don't have a person who has taught you. You're going under mentorship now, but you don't have a person who taught it to you. Does not mean that you haven't done research.
That's true, but even so, I'm saying even me, with that being the case, I'm still saying, hey guys, maybe check what I'm saying, please. Hey guys, do your own research.
Well, I'm
not the end all be all.
We're doing the transparency thing.
Yes, and so, my whole point of the astrology thing, that video got the most views that we had gotten at that point. That was our highest viewed video. And people were like, I want more, I want more, and I want more. And I was like, ooh, this is tempting to act like you know what you're talking about and to just, yeah, I know what I'm talking about. Here's the information. Like, and you don't. You don't. And it's so easy because it gets you views and it gets you clicks and it gets you clout. And that's what so many people online and in spiritual spaces, especially because it's not provable in a lot of means, in a lot of ways.
It's harder to prove.
It's harder to prove. And so checking your sources, who is this person talking? Are they accountable to the fact that they haven't been quote unquote properly educated? Are they accountable to the fact that they don't know everything? If they do say that they know everything, what are their credentials? Like Dan McClellan, if you're into deconstructing your religious upbringing, oh my gosh, I highly recommend Dan McClellan on TikTok. I trust him. He has a number of degrees from accredited places. He has done his shit and has spent the time getting very, very good. And when he is wrong, he owns up and is like, I was wrong. with no ego attached to it. So I trust pretty much everything that man says. Same thing with, if you wanted a good astrologer, Astro Lori. She's been studying for...
We've talked about Astro Lori before. I love her.
I trust her.
Yeah.
I trust her so much. She's been an astrologer for 30 years, gotten a really great education, and she has like an 87% accuracy rate of all of her predictions, which is almost unheard of.
It's pretty up there.
She's great. So the people who you cling on to every word that they say and you allow to educate you, go through and be like, what are the sources?
Right.
And like, there's this other girl, great alternative, Yamani Arian, I believe. I'm so sorry if I'm not saying that right. It's not in front of me. She's this girl who has not been educated on quantum mechanics or quantum physics at all. But
I've seen her.
Is so passionate about it. She's written, I haven't read her book yet. I bought it, but I haven't read her book. She cares so much. And she's not gone to school for quantum mechanics or quantum physics. I think she wants to. Her goal is to get a Nobel Prize for solving what's inside of a black hole or something like that. And she's so passionate about what she says. Goal. Yes, but she's also so upfront about the fact that she hasn't been formally educated about these things and that she is self-taught. And she talks about the books that she has read and why she thought that they were good and how they helped and how this wasn't helpful, but what she got out of it on a spiritual way. And so I do trust what this girl says.
Yeah.
Because she's transparent about her sources. And obviously, of course, just to have said it, this goes... Source vetting it's a problem outside of spiritual spaces.
Right.
We like, oh, an article title. I read this. Did you hear that? Blah, blah, blah. This is a fact. And you just like were on your Google News and bypassed a random website and just saw an article title and decided it was true.
Just ran with it.
You just ran with it. That's a problem.
Yeah.
Just vetting your sources, whether it's from your news, whether it's from somebody you follow on TikTok, whether it's a book that you want to read. People really like to say that they're doctors, even though they're not.
Right.
You got to check these things. It's important. And I think it is a skill that is not glorified enough is critical thinking and vetting your sources.
Right. Because you hear something and then you take it as gospel.
Especially if it fits your paradigm.
Mm-hmm. Most people don't want to look farther than that. They found their answer.
They're like, oh yeah, that validates how I feel. Oh, okay. Yeah. Then yeah, like I believe them.
At what point is it like validated enough though? At what point have you vetted enough? Because I feel like that's one of the biggest problems in today's news or today's information gathering is that there's so many people with opinions about so many contradicting things that you'll try to vet something and you'll end up with a contradicting bit of information that's just opinion based or not true. But you're trying to vet something that is unverifiable, such as spirituality. So you're running across all these different contradicting pieces of information.
And that's where the rest of the list comes from. Is this rooted in fear? Is this harmful? Is this separating me from others? Is this encouraging ego traps? And is this encouraging like being special and separating and all of these things? That's why the whole list is important, And as far as like logistical things, how do we know that this news article isn't blah, 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 blah? At a certain point, if you can't find the source and you can't find the source, and even Philip DeFranco goes, I want to talk about this. I can't find a valid source. It's happening. I'm interested. I'll talk about it when I have a valid source. And that's all you can really do. It's just take it, acknowledge it, be like, okay, we're going to wait for something tangible to come out that I can confirm that about. So with spirituality and psychic ability, you can just be like, this happened, and be like, well, that's you. I'm like, exactly. So here's what we did. You guys try it until science catches up so that we can start measuring these things. And I think we're getting there.
I feel like we are.
And that's why I find I'd love to have somebody who's like the non-spiritual science-y people. And I would love to have that here.
Yeah, without rudeness.
Of course, somebody who's kind, and will talk with us and answer our questions. And we can draw our conclusions based off of, it's good shit. Sources are important. Where's the evidence? Which is, we just kind of naturally talked about it.
Right. Sources eventually leads to evidence.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what sources are, really. Mm-hmm. If you're trying to prove something, you need that source/evidence.
And that's why Joe Dispenza's work is interesting. And it's a really great, I guess, sample.
Because it has some sort of evidence behind it.
Because in they provide the experiments that they did, the charts that were has.
So it's not necessarily that Joe Dispenza's stuff is not evidential or doesn't have.
To a certain extent, it is.
It has some stuff. It's the overarching sleazy marketing.
It's the how
that smothers it.
Yes, and also that leads me to believe it's like, okay, so the stuff, I'm just kind of taking what you say at face value. I want to run this by a person who does do and can under the verbiage and the lingo that he's using to be like, yes, this is a thing, except for this isn't a thing. I'm like, oh, okay. Interesting that's the other side of that coin, because you can sway anything. If you talk like you know what you're talking about, people just fucking believe you. And you can say enough jargon and sound like you know what you're talking about enough. You know what I mean? So it's like, where's the evidence? And so he's a great example.
And a lot of people don't want to go into
they don't want to do that work.
They don't want to do that work to find out.
I get it. It's annoying.
Yeah.
But then acknowledge in your mind, if you don't want to do that work, this might not be the full story. And so I'm not going to make this my personality or over suggest this. Right. So he's a good example, what I was saying, of both. There's something very good and helpful to be gleaned from it. Like the most fascinating and like mind-blowing meditation experience I've ever had was through I don't know what it's called, one of his breathing exercises where you clench your muscles going up and go through this system. We talked about Kundalini for a second. I think I might have accidentally done that to myself in the middle of that exercise. I felt like it's so hard to explain. In that exercise that I did,
you felt everything.
I felt everything everywhere all at once. It's like part of the movie where like she's doing everything at the same time. I felt that. Yeah. I was crying hysterically and laughing like so much at the same time. And like there was like a brain explosion. Pardon my French, like 10 million orgasms in my head at the same time. And it was crazy. It was the craziest thing I've ever felt. I have yet to since feel something as intense. So he has something there. Yeah. You know what I mean? And simultaneously, we have all of these other, I don't know. I don't really fucks with that. I don't really fucks with this. You're using this to whatever, because that's what sells. And we're a capitalist society. And if that's what sells, that's what gets you to be the guy that we can say, oh, yeah, Michelle Phan's in a cult because she went to a Joe Dispenza thing. Right. But you're well known at that point.
True.
So
I mean, you're being spoke about on this podcast.
You're being spoke about on this podcast just because we're such an important podcast.
Well, no, but in terms of like people have word of mouth, we are speaking about him, so he must have some notoriety.
Exactly. So you got to look at, that's why this list is so important, because the evidence, especially in mediumship as well, or like in psychic ability, you'd be like, well, you can't find that. Except for that I can. It's hard to do on video and online because so many things can be staged. Right. So there is a deep importance of your own personal experience with it, where you walk up to a random person at the Renaissance Fair who's supposed to be a psychic or medium and they read you to filth, and they've never seen you a day in your life. And
which would be interesting.
And something that just happened on the car right there they use as evidence. It's like nobody was in the car for that. How did you know I said that? That kind of stuff is really how psychic ability and mediumship starts to be like, oh, fuck. There's no way for you to know that. Right. You know, and you can't really consume it or experience it through a camera or through a podcast. You have to do it yourself. Even the act of becoming a psychic, I could be talking out of my ass. I guarantee you there are people who are like, oh, the stories of this mediumship that and this mediumship this that I happened. It was crazy. They'd be like, fucking liar, fucking bitch. Like,
yeah, you made that up.
You made that up for the fucking views.
Or even our test that we did at the end of each.
Yeah, which I still would like to do. We just haven't had the time. Our conversations have gotten good and we keep going well over time and we're tired. So what I want to do, like I'm not good at vlogging. I'm working on it. I was never like that bitch who just wanted the camera out every 5 seconds, even on like old YouTube. I never did that.
I did want to do that.
I just don't think about it. It's not in my wiring. So like when I've done this meditation, like that meditation where like in the morning I had a thing and then later I could have recorded it. I didn't think about it. So like I want to, if I have a weird moment, just record it really quick in my camera. This happened. It was really weird. It's this time, like, Google what time is it? And it tells you. And then later actually have a screen recording with blurred out faces of the mediumship class to see if I was right. That's evidence. But even so, that still could be orchestrated. But you get me. There's more of an accountability to the evidence of the situation. But even so, in growing your psychic ability, you still can't know until you've done it yourself. Right. So that's the full checklist.
Nice.
Look for evidence. Look for the source. See how much they want your money outside of just they should be compensated. How that whole conversation.
And this checklist is to root out all the bullshit. That doesn't mean that within the shit, you might not find nuggets of truth. That's gross.
I kind of think of it like a needle in a haystack.
Yeah, that's a better analogy. I really didn't like the poop searching. That sounds really fucking nasty. The more I said it, the more I wish I didn't say it.
I kind of think of it like a needle in a haystack, going off of what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think like
Jesus
there's gold
Christ.
or like gold in a trash pile. Like we have a pile of junk.
Yeah.
Just sitting in front of you, and it's like, hey, there might be gold in their trash pile, and then you're like, okay, and then you sit there and you go through all of it. And
I've never looked through poop. I want people to know that is not something that I do. That is no.
I think you do.
I don't.
Okay.
That's gross. Jesus
David,
Christ.
please.
Sorry, I'm tired.
So
Go ahead. Haystack, needle.
Haystack, needle. And there might be multiple pieces of good treasures that you can find in the junkyard or in the haystack or whatever. But a lot of it is garbage. And that's okay. Not every book's going to be a full banger. Not everything you hear is going to be like 100% true or correct. Or, it's... The discernment is so important. And when you approach things with these... it's a working list.
General checklist.
General checklist. You're going to have a better time coming out on the other side in a grounded, thoughtful, critical place.
With a good filter.
With a good filter that will help you grow instead of stifle you and oops you into the potential pitfalls of spirituality, which is quite a few things.
Yep. I also want to compare that to,
What?
Church.
What about?
Something that I really liked, or maybe not. I liked it. It seemed so much easier. Is that church has a certain structure that it's a lot less easy to fall into different pitfalls, even though the whole church is a pitfall.
The whole thing is a pitfall. I'm like, what are you talking about?
I'm talking about the structure of, it's like a school, right? This is the regimen.
Oh, yeah.
This is like, you follow these little lines, and then
it takes you to the next place.
It takes you to the next place.
But
here, it feels like there's so many paths.
Well, because nothing is structured like that.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
I see what you mean. Like, that's easy to follow, and that's why they do it that way, because people aren't going to question it, and then they can make you think whatever they make you think.
They make it seem so concrete and like you're walking down a hallway.
Yeah, and the thing is, life isn't a hallway.
Yeah.
If you want to go off of some Jesus shit,
it's a path that winds.
The road is narrow, baby. And I used to think that it's like, oh, it's so hard to stay on because it's so restrictive because you can't do anything. Nobody wants to get on the little narrow road. No, it's narrow because it's not well walked. Because it winds and it branches and there's so many different routes that you can take to get to the same place. The road is narrow and that nobody walks down it because it's not easy to do this work. It's not easy to check yourself and ask yourself, am I being egotistical? Does this upset me because it breaks my paradigm? Is this thing just confirmation bias for me? Is this thing helpful? Is this thing harmful? Does this thing have its sources? Whatever. Nobody wants to do that work. And so it's not this like wide 8-lane highway where everybody goes down. The road is narrow. It's off the beaten path. Nobody goes down it, and it goes in 9 million different directions, and it's an exploration.
Right.
That's what Jesus meant. I think Jesus was a baller. I don't like church, but Jesus was dope.
Sorry, I didn't mean to take us into the religion.
But I think doing the list like this helps with that. But honestly, it's kind of like choose your flavor. Approaching spirituality in general is kind of overwhelming. And this list ideally would prove some kind of rough structure on your own exploration journey. And ideally, by doing that, it'll help you avoid what we're talking about next episode, which are the pitfalls of spirituality or spiritual stuff, spiritual spaces. And that is spiritual psychosis, spiritual narcissism, spiritual bypassing, all right, pipelines, ego traps, the Messiah complex, honestly, madness, and it's good that goes into spiritual psychosis, but like madness, you can drive yourself mad. People have put themselves in mental hospitals by doing these things in an unsafe way.
A lot less funny. But at the same time, as serious as that is, it reminds me of the woodsman. Strictly into madness.
That's from Over the Garden Wall. Oh, no, that's not the woodsman. That's the uncle. The same children.
That's right. It's uncle. Uncle with the mansion.
Yeah, mansion. I don't remember what the fuck his name was from Over the Garden Wall, but yeah, I've been going into madness. It's like, oh.
Or is it just me?
I want to steal.
I want to steal.
Okay, well, yes.
Sorry.
Anyway.
The more you spoke about it and how serious it was, the less
that reference got funny. I know.
That's just like, oh, actually, madness is sad.
It does. There's a lot of pitfalls that happen.
Yeah.
In general, and that causes harm to yourself and others. Thanks so much for listening, everybody.
Yeah.
We upload this podcast every single week on any podcast listening platform of your choice. You can follow us in updates for this podcast anywhere.
at I'm Psychic, I guess. And you can follow our personals for any updates on our personal lives at The Doodles. That's at The DOOTLEZ.
That's at The DOOTLEZ. There's really not anything over there on the personals right now. But
no,
we want to do that again. Anyway, we're working on it. Goodbye.
Bye.
We'll see you next week. Okay, bye.